The Gospel of Gold by G.S. Lewis. Chapter 7. Mercy. For the small remainder of the morning, Gold wandered about Violet City, getting a feel for the area. It took less than 20 minutes. In fact, Violet Hamlet would have been a more apt name, given the sparseness of the old-style houses compared to vegetation, and the lack of commercial chain businesses and restaurants. There wasn't even a Pokemart, until Gold made his way back to the Pokemon Center and found it inside as a subsection. The voice of a televised broadcaster droned in his ears. Believe that the recent weather anomalies can be traced to the Mahogany Town's area Lake of Rage. Geologists speculate that an unprecedented upsurge in the Gyarados population has caused a detriment. Gold tuned out the rest of the message and looked around. Only one person sat behind the reception desk, a woman watching the television with glossy eyes. A single, dusty rejuvenator machine rested behind her. After some small talk with the receptionist, Gold learned that she was an intern from a local Pokemon academy. The price to use the machine was, as Gold had heard, extortionate. The cost for more serious services, like surgery and bone mending, was ludicrous. The nurse intern informed him, with some heat, that most trainers had chosen to replace their maimed Pokemon rather than pay the money. Replace? Gold asked nervously, fishing for elaboration. The woman told him to use his imagination, and his mind flashed to the animal graveyard just out back. He would have pressed the question, but at that moment, the doors in the back opened. The three campers had returned, their faces, if possible, even more severely stricken than when he had seen them leave earlier that morning. Ponytail and Todd held their Pokemon gingerly in their arms, while Ivan stood frozen, both hands pressed tightly over his mouth in fists. Ponytail approached the reception desk, looking imploringly at the nurse intern. "Please, is there any way you can lower the price for surgery?" he pleaded. "Between the three of us, we have enough money for one operation, but not two." For a moment, the woman seemed to consider it, as Todd reached down and opened his wallet, revealing a considerable amount of bills. But then, her eyes shifted to the two Pokemon being carried by Ponytail and Todd. Ponytail's Cyndaquil was a quadruped fire type, but 3 of its legs were bent at awkward angles, as though they had gotten crushed in the gears of farm equipment. Todd's Totodile wasn't conscious, but its lower jaw hung limply, and several teeth were either missing or broken. The intern's face stiffened. "No," she said flatly. "Even if you had the necessary money, I would never be able to return those two to the condition of fighting fit that the standard practice demands. Take it from me, that Cyndaquil will never walk the same again, let alone be able to dodge in combat. And his Totodile..." The intern paused and gave it a long look. She raised her eyes to Todd, with an expression of mingled disgust and pity. "The head trauma is extensive beyond salvaging. It will be dead within 2 hours. A pregnant pause followed. Ivan and Ponytail looked at Todd with alarm and horror, but Todd's face had gone blank. His only expression was a 1,000-yard stare of one gone into shock from seeing too much too rapidly. The intern's face softened a bit. "I'm sorry. I know you trainers have an imposed time limit, and the difficulty curve this year is extreme. I can't entirely blame you for this outcome." Another few moments of quiet passed. Then Ponytail spoke in a tight voice. "Ivan, give her the money." Both Ivan and the nurse in turn looked at him with confusion and wonder. Ponytail nodded in affirmation, looking down at the injured Cyndaquil in his arms. "I'll sell what I have to pay you back. If it means I can't go on, I'll end my journey right here. But I can't leave my Pokémon like this." "All right, I've heard enough." Ivan had taken one step forward when Gold cut in. "You guys remember me," he said, approaching them and beckoning the trio with his hand. "Come out here." There was authority of command in his voice, something that Gold had not anticipated to come out as it did. He went with it. The three campers followed him in mute astonishment, leaving the nurse intern behind with confusion written on her face. Gold went out the front, taking his followers around the side and towards the building's rear graveyard. "This is wrong," he murmured to Spirit in his mind. "This whole situation. I know Pokémon were meant to fight and want to fight, but it's like they lost their inhibitions. It's like there's no longer such a thing as too far. Training was never a blood sport back in Ecruteak." Gold flexed his fingers in frustration. "How did it ever get this far?" "Time," Spirit replied to his thoughts. "The coming of new generations. A million tiny choices and changes. The human race is a landscape of ever-shifting sand when left to itself." Gold could feel her sorrow as though it had originated in his own heart. Abruptly, it changed into a resolve of tempered steel. "I am not content to let it go on like this," she declared in a voice like distant thunder. "You share my determination. Plant seeds in their hearts." They had arrived in the graveyard. Gold pointed to the headstones to make certain his audience would make no mistake about their location. "This is the path they put you on," he said, approaching Todd and Ponytail. They withdrew slightly, and he stopped, giving them both meaningful looks. "Do you want your Pokémon to live?" He waited as the two boys looked down at the Pokémon in their arms. Off to the side, Ivan stood mutely, his eyes flicking back and forth. "Yes," Todd finally managed to rasp. Ponytail likewise nodded. "Then bring them here." They obeyed. Gold placed his hands gently on Totodile's head and the tip of Cyndaquil's nose. He closed his eyes. "Come back to health," he whispered. Half an hour later, the four of them sat, eating hamburgers on a bench outside a cheap diner, while Totodile, Cyndaquil, and Chikorita ran circles around them in play. Todd's face was red and puffy, an indicator that he had only recently stopped crying. Ivan, who hadn't spoken a word thus far, now seemed capable of only 3. "Oh my God!" As for Elliot, whom Gold had been calling Ponytail the entire time, he was full of joyful laughter, slapping Gold on the back and constantly shaking his hand. The burger lunch had come courtesy of him. "It's true! It's really true!" he marveled, grinning from ear to ear as Gold smiled meekly back. "That story you told at the campfire last night about the phoenix, that sort of stuff just isn't brought up in the city we're from. Even when we crossed paths with that one girl who claimed someone had magically revived her Pokémon, I didn't know what to believe. And it turned out to be you!" He cackled delightedly, as if at an untold joke, and gave Gold another good-natured thump on the back. All of a sudden, he froze and looked at Gold carefully. "You're not actually her, are you? Ho-oh disguised in human form? A boy's body to throw us off?" No, said Gold easily, waving his hand. "Although I have seen her take the form of a woman." "So, does she, talk to you?" asked Todd, as he tossed a piece of his burger to a hungry Totodile. Gold nodded. "Oh my god!" squealed Ivan. Todd ignored him. "What does she say?" Gold thought about it for a minute. "Sometimes she asks me who I am and how I react to stuff. Other times, she gives me small glimpses behind the curtain about how reality actually works." He looked up at 3 blank faces. Gold shrugged his shoulders. "I'm not doing a good job explaining. It's not just what she says, but how she says it too. She told me I'm precious to her, and it's beyond tender." He flushed and lowered his head before pressing on. "But she hates it when people and Pokemon are abused for the sake of seeing how far they can go. I mean, she really hates that. With her, there is no hesitation or uncertainty. She's absolute. I get the feeling she's long since thought out all the answers." Ponytail Elliot raised his eyebrows. "That's rather," he started. "Scary," finished Todd. He grimaced and fixed his eyes on Gold. "Look, man," he mumbled. "I just want to say again how sorry I am for sending you out of—" "It's fine. It's okay." Gold waved his hand dismissively. "If I was mad at you, I wouldn't be eating with you. Speaking of which, thanks again for the lunch." Elliot laughed as he rolled up his wrapper and tossed it in a nearby garbage bin. "You're welcome! It's a heck of a lot cheaper than surgery would have been." He looked back at Gold curiously. "Is this what you do then? You go around meeting trainers in the woods, and then you heal their Pokemon?" "I just started yesterday," Gold sighed, looking down at the wrestling match between Chikorita and Cyndaquil. "Today, if you count miracle healing. I'm still not sure what this journey holds for me." Elliot sat back down next to him, a resigned look on his face. "Well, now that my own journey's unofficially over..." He made a face and stared up at the sky. "Over? That's a hard pill to swallow. I guess it doesn't really have to be over, except for the crazy strict league part of it." "You're already taking it better than the last girl I spoke to," murmured Gold. "Yeah, well, if it were me this morning, I'd have wanted to know how lopsided my match with Faulkner would have ended up being." Elliot paused and considered his words. "In short, I might just stick around to warn people how insane the gym challenge is." "It wouldn't be so bad, except for that time limit," Todd qualified. "Yes, it would," Elliot grumbled. "Faulkner has a Pidgeot. If anyone skipped his gym and took the time to make the loop around Azalea and Goldenrod, he just hit him with that when they returned. He was holding back, but he still does it at a level beyond what most trainers can handle. You were there when that girl lost. You saw how it turned out for us." "I suppose I'd better stick around too," Gold said, thinking of Marina and Janichi. "I left a couple of people that I had just gotten to know, and I owe them an explanation."